it's your internet bestie, Noelle Blue, and it's another episode of Books and Looks. Books and Looks is where I talk about a book that I've been reading while I do my makeup. You may or may not have read it. If you're new, go ahead and like and subscribe. And if you're not, welcome back, boo. This episode is going to be all about Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams. Now, I don't know much about her as an author. This was actually just a really talked about book that I started. I put on my TBR because everyone else was talking about it. When I did finally get it, it actually took me about a year and a half to read it, and I just finished reading it about a couple weeks ago at this point. So, Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams is what we're going to be talking about while I do my makeup. And today's look is going to be more of a melanin sunburst goddess look, kind of to play up with the colors of the cover. Lots of oranges, bright oranges, yellows, white, we'll make it do what it do. So let's get into this look. So Queenie basically starts off in the gynecologist's office. I wasn't really expecting it. I always do this. I always forget to put my primer on first. Queenie starts off in the gynecologist's office. She's sitting in the gyno's office, much as we do as women. And there is a doctor who is looking very, very confused, like at her vagina, and then also back at this screen, and then back at her vagina. And then they feel like they need to go get a second opinion. And so by the end of this little skit thing that's going on here, about 3 doctors have been staring at her vagina. And basically they're doing so because something's not right on the scanner. They're looking and it looks like she's got an IUD, but they're seeing something weird. And basically come to find out she just had an abortion, not an abortion, she had a miscarriage. Now, this would be like an aw kind of moment if we don't immediately jump into a flashback of Queenie and her former boyfriend, Tom. He's former, but she's still holding out hope that this break that they're taking is going to be temporary and they're going to get back together. Now, there are parts of this book that I personally feel like mirrored my life a little bit. We've all been through those kinds of situations where it's just not working. We're going to take a break. We still holding out hope that we're going to get back together. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But in this particular instance, I feel like it's kind of obvious how things are going. The flashback is literally of Queenie thinking about a time where her and Tom's grandmother, Tom is white, by the way, his grandmother, also Caucasian, makes a comment referring to what their children would look like, and she wanted to make sure that they had Queenie's long, thick hair, but wanted to make sure they had like Tom's light eyes, and maybe Tom's thin nose, but maybe definitely Queenie's full lips, kind of like picking your favorite pieces. So she does this flashback where, she remembers that, and basically the doctor's like, yeah, well, you had a miscarriage and we're sorry to hear that, but this is what we can do to make you feel better, and there you go. And this is where we meet Queenie's super religious aunt. Her aunt doesn't like to talk about her inner parts because it's inappropriate, but she came with her to the gynecologist's office, so that makes it weird. Like, why can't we talk about it? Anyway, and then she's loudly preaching about how many-ish in the gynecologist's office and how women today don't really think things that she's your stereotypical aunt, like you did some things in your youth and then you found Jesus and got saved, and so everybody else is a heathen. She wanted those aunts. So we meet her, and Queenie, tries to talk to her about what they were talking about in the gynecologist's office in regards to the miscarriage. And her aunt flips out because they're on a bus when you try to talk to me about your girly parts. So they don't end up having that conversation. Queenie also is still living in the apartment that she used to share with her boyfriend, Tom. And Tom has asked her to move out. Now, Tom seems like a dick, if I'm being honest. From start to finish, when you first are introduced to Tom, he seems... I don't know. He seems like an asshole. I hope they don't yell at me for that. I curse sometimes. He's not a good guy. He doesn't seem like a good guy. All the flashbacks they have of Tom are of him being weird in ways that don't make sense for someone who is, like, he's white. And I've dated a white guy before, so I'm not the expert, but there was just a difference in the relationship. Like, you understand that because you're dating a person of color, that racial things are a touchy subject. And so you don't typically allow your Caucasian relatives to call her niggas. Y'all don't allow, conversations about, Black Lives Matter. You just don't typically go into those conversations because it could always go left real quick. And so Tom never really stood up to his family in that regard. He always kind of made Queenie seem like she was the bad guy for reacting in a very realistic response to his uncle called her a nigga at one point. They were playing Clue. And the brother tries to excuse the fact that the uncle said this by, saying, well, historically, the maid was of African American descent. And that was supposed to make it okay that your uncle just called me the N-word. Right. So that happened. Basically, Tom and Queenie broke up. And what caused the breakup is because they were at this party where the uncle called her the N-word. And the party was for his mother. His mother was turning, however old his mama was turning, no one really cares. It's not that important. But it was her birthday, and his uncle had called her the N-word as they were playing a game, waiting for people to come out with the cake. And Queenie gets upset. And instead of Tom telling his uncle about himself, correcting the faux pas, making sure that he understood that he was being inappropriate, Tom basically tries to tell Queenie that she's wrong for being upset in the first place. You gotta calm down. You can't always take this so seriously. It's all, you're being very dramatic. In a very condescending and, dismissive kind of way, in fact. And it's, like I said, as it's challenging because it is a biracial relationship. They are trying to, make that work. We don't want to necessarily say that all of these pairings don't work, but it's definitely not going to work when one of the pair is dismissive of very real issues that the other would have. And this is a situation where your uncle's just being blatantly disrespectful. So you should definitely feel no qualms about correcting that. Like, he had no reason to call her out of her name. I don't care how historical the game was supposed to be or who was called back then. It is definitely not that time, and I will knock your uncle out, and then it's going to be a problem. What ends up happening is she storms out of the room as his mom's coming in with the cake, spills the cake all over her shoes, and spends like an hour and a half waiting at the bus stop pissed off. He comes out with her stuff, basically explaining that she ruined mom's party. She ruined mom's party. He don't think it's working. He gonna stay up here with his family, and she should go back home to the flat to calm down for a little bit. When I first started reading the book, I felt like Queenie and I were literary kindred souls. I did find parallels in her situation and my situation. I felt a sisterhood for her. But there are some situations in this book where I don't feel any similarities at all. I cannot say that I would have reacted in that way. If you decide to stay up there after your uncle calls me the N-word and I'm the bad guy and I ruined your mom's birthday party because whatever else you feel like telling yourself, and you think I'm going to just go back to the flat and you're going to come back at some point, you're going to come back to find the locks changed and new phone who dis. That's what's going to happen. But Queenie is a different kind of person, and so she, waited, and when he came back, she apologized, and he then still told her it's really not working out, because it wasn't. And he felt like at that time, they needed to take a break. Every woman who's ever been a human in the world of the dating scene understands that a break is a breakup. When people say we're taking a break, I personally call BS on that every time. I don't believe in breaks. Either we together or we not together. And if we are together, then we not seeing other people. And if we're not together, then we're not together. And you're free to do as you like. But what we not finna do is play around in each other's faces, because a break is what? Are we single or are we not single? We single. That's called a breakup. We just broke up. And that's fine. So he proposes a break, and she's supposed to move out of their apartment, even though all of her stuff is in the apartment. He feels like he can better handle the financial burden of the place because his job pays more. Even though she found the place, she has all of her stuff in that place. It is their crib. She is the female. He feels like it is actually a better idea for her to move out. And this stupid heifer goes and does it. She agrees to that. That sounds like a great idea. Yeah, no, that's fine. I'll move out. Brilliant. So she does. She moves out of the apartment. And she moves out of their very cute, very swanky, 2-bedroom crib and into this room that she got to share with 3 or 4 strangers. And this begins Queenie's descent into what I consider madness because, she's told that she's going on a break, that they just need some time to, figure things out, and they'll reconnect in about a year or so. So she takes that to mean that, we're going to take some time apart and we'll get back together in a year. Cool, let's do that. So in the meantime, she's trying to figure out what to do with herself. And, people are coming on to her and she needs to get over her broken heart. So Queenie decides that she's going to first hook up with a guy that lives near her building, and he's always hitting on her, and he is married, but he always hitting on her, and they, that's his wife's problem. So she goes and hooks up with this guy. And this guy basically treats her like a piece of meat and sends her on her way, and she feels horrible about it and tells her friends, and they tell her, well, stop doing it, idiot. And she keeps doing it. And basically the book is a series of really bad decisions that Queenie makes from start to finish, and we as the viewer just go along for this very toxic ride. I did enjoy the book of Queenie because I feel like it was a story that needed to be told. There are women like her everywhere, but I feel like the story of Queenie was hard to get through because at some point in time I just wanted to climb into the book and smack her myself. And then sometimes I wanted to fight the people who were in the book being mean to her because it's like she's clearly not equipped to deal with these things in the same way that other people are. So why are y'all messing with her? Like, leave that poor child alone. But basically she goes on a break from Tom, or he breaks up with her. Whatever. They split up and she starts banging just random guys, any guy who tells her she's cute. She basically gives him some play and goes for it. And that's where we differ. Baby girl's still very selective over here, but Shorty was just like throwing it in a circle for anybody and everybody who was willing to give her the time of day. And that led her to some really interesting characters. There was the character of Guy, whose name is really Guy. And Guy liked really rough, kinky sex, and Queenie didn't really like it, but then she also kind of liked it, but then she didn't really like it because it was really extra and aggressive. Guy basically tore her up so much that when she went to the gynecologist, they thought she was raped. When she explained that she wasn't raped, they then thought she was being pimped out. When she explained that she wasn't being pimped out, they then, still gave her some pamphlets. Maybe you might want to talk to somebody. This isn't normal. And so the conversation of whether or not Queenie is sane or well, or her mental health really comes into play in this moment because somebody finally says, I don't know, this is weird. You having all these random sex partners, and this guy over here kind of bruised you up so bad you look like you are a victim of an assault, and you keep coming back here every couple of weeks or so, and we think that is odd. So for the first time, somebody dared to actually address her in that term. And let me correct that, because she's had friends and her friends are concerned for her as well. Maybe not necessarily in the same way as a medical professional would be and is and was, but she was definitely being checked on. She made this friend group called the Corgis, and the Corgis consisted of her friend Darcy, her friend The name is spelled Kiyazake, Kiyazake, I think. But her name is Cheska. Exactly. Now, I am not African in the UK. And I just found out through a 23andMe and Ancestry that I'm Nigerian, and I don't know nothing about being Nigerian in the UK, but I'll tell you this. Kiyazaki does not spell Cheska to me. And I need to learn my language and my history because I struggled with her name so hard. But she's got her friend Chess, and she's got Darcy. And Darcy and Jessica are actually, I call them her genuine friends because these girls really care about her. They really, want to make sure that she's straight, and they see that she's acting, out, and they don't necessarily think that this is a good idea, but they're down for the ride because, bitch, we're here. We're your friends. There is a character in the book called Cassandra, and Cassandra is also supposed to be Queenie's friend. Cassandra is Queenie's friend right up until Cassandra finds out that the new boyfriend that she's been bragging to everyone about, her wonderful guy, her awesome guy, her doctor guy, is really the guy that's been boning Queenie this entire time and sending her to the emergency room for vaginal tears and things of that nature. Now, when Cassandra finds this out, instead of being upset with Guy for cheating on her, because you know who knew he was boning Queenie? He did. You know who knew he was dating Cassandra? He did. You know who didn't know about each other? Queenie and Cassandra. Instead of Cassandra being upset with Guy, her cheating ass boyfriend, for boning her best friend, she gets upset with Queenie. Talks all this trash about Queenie. Literally raids her for filth. And packs up and goes and moves in with Guy. Yep, that happens. Queenie's kind of left with feeling like crap at this point. There are a couple of other questionable scenarios. There was this guy that was sitting on her at her job. You know the term work husband? I don't particularly believe in those because either, like I said, either I got a real nigga or I don't. And if you are my real dude, then you wouldn't appreciate me having a work husband, so I don't really play around like that. I got male coworkers who are cool. But you don't date your coworkers. It becomes very messy. I know a couple of people who have dated their coworkers. For some people, it turned out great, especially after one of them left the job and they weren't coworkers anymore. For some of them, it blew up exactly like the stereotype of it is supposed to, and this is why you don't date your coworkers. Shout out to y'all. You know who you are. I won't say our names, but you know who you are messing around with your coworker, and that didn't work out well for you. You know. I won't tell, but you know. So Queenie goes and she's been hanging out with this guy named Ted. And Ted is a sports writer, or maybe he's an accountant. I don't actually know what he is or what he does. They call him tweed glasses though, because he wears a lot of tweed and he wears glasses. And for some reason I pictured Ted as a Moorish chestnut in a suit, melanated hottie office guy. But he's a white dude, and he is a slightly balding looking white dude, if I'm not mistaken. Very cute, fluffy hair, but he is getting old, and you can see that. My point is that he seemed like a great guy when she first started talking to him. Now, remember what I just said about not dating your coworkers. I truly stand by that. However, she was going through a breakup. He really just seemed like he wanted to hang out, and that seemed cool. Until it started going left, because Queenie doesn't know how to handle herself. And again, like I said, anybody who told her she was pretty or, hung out with her for longer than a couple of minutes got the cookies. And so at some point, she ends up banging tweed glasses in the bathroom. Furthermore, they had been having these really cheesy office banter kind of text messages, and they were sending each other emails from the company computers and all this other type of craziness. And so they ended up banging each other in the office office bathrooms. Come to find out, he's married. Right, married. As soon as he gets the cookies, cuts her completely off. And then, of course, finds out that he is married. And this entire time, his wife has been pregnant. Right. So he makes it seem like she's been hitting on him this entire time and files a sexual harassment lawsuit out against Queenie, getting her suspended. Now, to be fair, she technically got herself suspended because, child, you've been doing all types of non-work related things. Your boss has been telling you to get your life together, focus on your job, and you just been doing all types of foolishness. You know dang full well that you should not be boning your coworkers. But no, what do? You go and bone your coworkers. And he files a complaint because you knew he was going to as soon as it got real uncomfortable. Or his wife found out. And that's really been the issue. He's been trying to keep it from his wife. So basically the situation with Ted and Queenie, she gets suspended. She spends some time trying to get herself together. She actually ends up going to therapy, but when she gets back, finds out his wife's pregnant, he starts kind of following her around, and she gets vindicated in the end because, of course, he makes a big scene. She's able to then prove that he was actually harassing her. They have company emails. They, have video cameras of her leading her into the bathroom. And so he ends up getting fired. But throughout all that process, she did first get suspended and had to go through that situation. So that was the situation with her and Ted. The situation with her and the Indian guy, his name was ID originally. Like I said, he was married. She knew he was married. And so he always used to hit on her anyway. And that really didn't, that was that situation. Later on in the book, she actually gets stopped by him and his wife. She just goes to say hi because she sees him. And his wife is like, oh, well, this is the fat chick you've been cheating on me with. And I found her drawers in the car. And how dare you do such a thing? She goes and takes swipes at Queenie. And it gets real crazy at some point. She just kind of takes it. I feel like the issue that I had with Queenie, my biggest issue with Queenie throughout the entire book was that she never really stood up for herself. You just let things happen to you. You never really took charge of yourself or your life or any of the real decisions that you made. You kind of just went with it. And so you got this girl here, you don't know her. All you know is her husband. Her husband is, I guess, a cool associate of yours, but that's not really your friend. You did bang him, but that's your business. And ultimately, if you want to fight, you need to be fighting your husband. But she goes after the girl. And Queenie just kind of takes it. And Queenie often just takes it. That is Queenie to me in a nutshell. Instead of standing up for yourself, you kind of just roll over. And I guess that was the transition in the book because, well, not this part exactly. The transition's coming. So after that happens, she also has one final ending situation with Tom. She had her little friendship breakup with Cassandra because Cassandra found out about Guy. She already got attacked by ID's wife. She got ghosted by Ted. And at this point, she's just trying to figure out what's going on with Tom and if they're ever getting back together because she's kind of ready for this whole thing to be over, as you can imagine someone would be. When she goes to the apartment they used to share together, and when she does, she is greeted at the door by a very blonde, very blue-eyed young woman, and she is wearing a t-shirt that clearly belongs to Tom and is confused as to who this black woman on my doorstep could even possibly be. And so that happens. And so the conversation that Queenie has with Tom is that, I thought we were going to get back together. And then he tries to explain that he thought it was clear that they were always broken up. And he's not really sure how she misunderstood that. And yeah, so she looks like an idiot. And Shorty comes back to the door like, hey babe, are you coming back in? Because we were doing something before your ex-girlfriend showed up. And yeah, Queenie goes back in the rain, feeling like an idiot, looking kind of stupid. But shortly after that, she has a nervous breakdown because it's all just been too much at this point. And she thought that all of this was so that her and Tom can get back together. But if they're not going to be getting back together, then what has all of this been for? We don't know. We were hoping she had an answer, but it doesn't seem like she did. So she goes through all of this and basically decides, maybe I need to see a therapist. And she comes to this conclusion because she goes back to the little nurse that at the clinic she's been going to. And the nurse is like, hey, maybe you need to see a therapist because you've been going through all this stuff and you've been dealing with all this weirdness. And you come in here so frequently with all these different sex partners and no one seems to have been, saying that you're better than this. So I'll say it. Shorty, you better than this. Go see a therapist. You need a hug. So she goes. And first she feels like she needs to get permission from her grandparents because she's staying with her grandparents. Because after she got suspended from her job and had a nervous breakdown because she found out that Tom moved on, she didn't have any money and nowhere else to go. So she moved back in with her grandparents because they had space. Yep, that's just her rock bottom. So she goes and stays back with her grandparents and they make her do household chores because that's what grandparents make you do, I guess. And during this time, she feels like I need to get permission to see a therapist from them because they are Jamaican and apparently Jamaicans and Black people in general don't really believe in therapists because we endured so much that we're supposed to be able to survive anything, and taking the time to talk to another person about your feelings is horrible. And I feel like that is one of the bigger themes of the book, actually. The stereotype of the strong Black woman. They really weren't trying to let Queenie get help at first. They were content to just watch her spiral because she's supposed to be able to just kind of suck it up and make it through because that is what we as Black women do. And they weren't really willing to see that she wasn't able to kind of do it on her own. They actually weren't willing to acknowledge that her mother wasn't able to kind of do it on her own and was still trying to pick up the pieces of that. Her grandfather, actually, during a part of the book, says that that's why he agreed to allow her to go to therapy in the first place, because when he looked at her, he saw his daughter, and his daughter had allowed a man to break her down so much that she had lost the will to get back up again. And his daughter was her mother. I watched your mom go through that. I'm not about to let you do that too. So if therapy is what you need, then I guess you need to go to therapy. And so that's what she did. She went to therapy and she got help. And she figured out a lot about why she did some of the things that she did. And she was able to get herself to a better space. And a lot of what she was dealing with was just general anxiety and depression, which I feel like a lot of us deal with on a regular basis. I know I've dealt with anxiety and depression for many years. And every day it is a process. You'd be surprised what can set you off. But I mean, for Queenie, it was more of an everyday thing. First, she had issues with her self-esteem. She didn't really have a lot of love for herself. She was often looking for external validation. And so a lot of that is why she did what she did. As a whole, I felt for Queenie, but as a person, it was kind of maddening at times. Just, you wanted to take her and shake her. Just like, stop it. But I mean, overall of the book, I feel like the ending was better than the other parts for me. Her She Became was much better to witness than the Her Before. And I feel like that was obviously the point. Like, you wouldn't have sat along for the ride if it wasn't worth it in the end, but it was just a lot. it was a lot. Queenie made a lot of bad decisions. And I feel like we all do in different parts of our lives. There are times where, yeah, nah, you didn't make the best decision, but it was a lot of those for her. It was just like, really, dude? Like, really? Like, yeah, you decided that you couldn't find anybody else to bang besides the guy at your office? Yeah, that's all you got? That was where you ended up with things? That was it for you. Okay. And then it's like when he stopped talking to you, instead of you just going about the rest of your day, you then felt like you needed to pop up on him and see what he was up to so that he can then, file a sexual harassment suit. Or like, why would you go? You hadn't talked to Tom in months, actually. All he said was Happy New Year's on December 31st to you. And you decided to go and pay him a visit after months of not speaking just to see what he was up to. Like things like that. And it was weird because they didn't make sense. Like, why would you do this? And it was just a lot. It was a lot. Her situation with Cassandra irritated me because it was like, why wouldn't you stand up for yourself? There were so many other ways she could have responded to things that I feel like she really didn't. And it was because she didn't really want to, or maybe she didn't know how. I don't know, guys. It was a lot. You feel for her in the situation. During the kind of flashbacks, they do show you that she was a victim of child abuse. And that was kind of the reason why she felt the way she felt about her mother and her mother's situation. And they even kind of paralleled it, I feel like, so that you can see the similarities and differences between the two women. Like, I don't feel like Queenie was being abused by Tom, but she definitely was also kind of being abused by Tom. Like, you were allowing this, not to bring race into it, but you were allowing this white guy, and you often allowed random ass white dudes to just come in and treat you however they wanted to, and you kind of just took it because, I don't know. I really don't know. What was it? She actually said that the reason why she didn't date black guys is because of her mom's relationship with her ex-boyfriend, her stepfather, Roy. Roy was so abusive to the both of them that it turned her off from black guys completely. I do understand that to some extent. Like, I'm not attracted to it because this was my abuser, but you are black and you keep dating these white guys who are also equally abusive. The final guy that she dated in the book, she didn't have sex with him per se, but it was after she had already been into therapy and already noticed, her own bad behaviors. She went home with this guy just because he was nice and he was cute, and come to find out he just wanted to bone her. And then after that, they didn't have sex, but during that time, once he got her to his house, he then tried to, start an argument about why Black Lives Matter. Yep, that happened. He definitely was a douche, and she left him there, thank God. But that was the kind of guy that Queenie would typically go for. And it really just spoke to where she was and her growth at this point in time in the book. Because like I said, at this point in time in the book, she's already been through therapy, and she was kind of able to come into her own in a sense. And so she was coming out on the other side. So she saw the warning flags and kind of walked out before like really engaging in a relationship with this dude. But that was very much the typical kind of guy that she would go for originally. And it would just, she never really found her Prince Charming in that book. I don't think it was that kind of book though. And so I'm okay with that. They originally billed it as a Bridget Jones diary. I do not actually recall having read that book. And I didn't actually watch the movie. So I don't know much about Bridget Jones' Diary or if this had anything to do with it, but it was definitely a really good insight into the psychological aspect of the Black woman. It was a way to look into the UK Black people, I guess. I don't know anything about the UK for real. I've never been there. I actually learned a lot about their slang just by reading this book, and I thought that was interesting because they say things in a really interesting way. That was what I got out the book. I got Queenie has horrible taste in men, and I got that European slang is kind of dope. Hold on 1 second, because these midnight pleasures like to play with my life. You talked about the book starting with Queenie's miscarriage and ending with kind of a new birth for Queenie. You know, she had an opportunity to grow from the experience. And it was a pretty crappy experience, if I gotta be honest. You know, she took herself through the ringer, but came out on the other side pretty much better for it. I don't typically read, again, books like this. I really do love my fantasy whenever I can get it, but I actually really enjoyed the story as a whole. Queenie was maddening. I'm not gonna hold you. She definitely stressed me out at times. I hated the character of Cassandra. Like, altogether, I hated her. She didn't seem like a really good, genuine friend. She didn't seem to really be there for Queenie. She seemed more like she was there. She kept Queenie around to make her feel better about herself, which is why she reacted the way she reacted when Queenie and Guy hooked up. Because she considered herself superior to Queenie. So how can someone who is inferior to her, my apologies, bed her boyfriend, which is a crappy way to think about somebody you consider your friend, if we're being honest. But also, it was proof that that girl was not her friend. She came back towards the end of the book, and they were supposed to make amends, and Queenie welcomed her back, but it was more to show the growth that Queenie endured throughout the story and less about their friendship continuing. Because I don't know how y'all feel about it, but me and Cassandra would not have been friends after that. Some of the things that she said you really can't come back from, no matter how much history there is. A lot of it was stuff, I feel like that's really how she felt in the first place, and everything else that came out of it was just, you know, Queenie's growth. Because like I said, I feel like when it came down to it, she was willing to completely cut Queenie out of her life, versus face the fact that her boyfriend actually found Queenie attractive. She was actually really upset because her and her boyfriend her and Guy had not been doing it as much. They weren't having sex really, and he'd been over there bruising up Queenie, and that's really what irritated her, I think, and what upset her the most. And I can get why that would be upsetting, but at the end of the day, like I said, it really wasn't Queenie's fault. She never knew. Cassandra did keep saying, you know, my gorgeous Guy, oh my Guy. But it was like, I mean, we didn't know that you were talking about the guy whose name was actually Guy, because you never said that, oh, his name is actually Guy. They'd never met him before. When Queenie did the math, she'd actually been kind of screwing him longer than him and Cassandra had been dating. But she would never tell her this, of course, because it's not that important. But ultimately, like I said, her and Cassandra becoming friends again is really more of a testament to Queenie's personal growth, and less to their friendship, because I would not have been friends with Cassandra. Some things you just really can't come back from. I loved the character of Darcy. Darcy was what I would consider like a true friend. And Darcy was the one who actually ended up coming to the birthday party for Queenie. She was invited by Queenie's little cousin. I think it's interesting that Cheska wasn't invited, but Cheska didn't have a real way of knowing about Queenie's little cousin. I don't know. I guess Queenie's little cousin felt more comfortable reaching out to Darcy than she felt reaching out to Cheska. But I feel like in regards to them being friends, Cheska being Black and being a female, like in that world, probably would have been the better fit. I don't think it really mattered at the end of the day, but it kind of mattered to me. It was a minor thing that mattered to me. But yeah, I did love Darcy. Darcy was Queenie's co-worker, and they worked together in the same exact section. I think they did different jobs, but they did work together in the same section of the newspaper. And they were frequently talking, often, all the time, when they shouldn't have been, which was part of why Queenie's job was in jeopardy. Now, some people would be like, well, why wasn't Darcy's job in jeopardy? Well, because Darcy was still doing her job, and that's kind of the point. That was literally the point and the issue with Queenie. I will say that when you are dealing with mental health issues, different things take precedent over what's going on. And so for her, she was kind of dealing with some things at that time. Whether we all deem them important or not is neither here nor there. She was still dealing with some things, and those things definitely negatively impacted her work performance. They were impacting her friend relationships. They were impacting her ability to function as a whole. And I feel like these are things that people often overlook with mental health. How small things like focusing on the job you've been doing this whole time can be challenging. She became obsessive over everything, really. She spent hours obsessing over text messages and conversations. It was crazy. It was like literally watching someone's downward spiral was on paper. And it actually made me kind of want to go see my own therapist, if I'm being honest, because it was crazy. Like, she was going through it. She was having panic attacks, and towards the end of it, she really needed, she kind of had to check herself, not into anywhere, but she definitely had to check herself. And she had to spend some time getting herself back to normal. Whatever normal is, I suppose, because normal is relative, but she definitely needed to take that time. And some people's rock bottom is different, but hers was definitely losing that job that she worked so hard to get, and finding out Tom had a girlfriend. In the comments below, did you know 2 chapters in, 3 chapters in, when did you know that Tom had moved on? Because I called it around page 46 and then annoyedly read along until she figured it out. And I was just trying to figure out, when did you guys figure out that he had moved on? Because I called it down to the blonde hair and the blue eyes. Just want to know. Leave a comment. But yeah, like it was a process that she needed to go through as a whole. She had to experience all that so she can come out on the other side, a Black melanin goddess in her own right. And I guess that was her journey. Would I read more works from Candice Carty-Williams? Absolutely. Would I read Queenie's Wife? Probably not. She stressed me out. I couldn't have actually been Queenie's friend looking at it, because I would have smacked her. She needed lots of loving smacks and maybe a hug or 2. Definitely a hug or 2. Definitely a couple of smacks. Here we go. Queenie's little cousin. She was a funny character. You can tell some of the characters were just there for comic relief, but she still was hilarious. She was youthful. Queenie's little cousin, I thought, was super adorable. Her character she was hilarious. She is every little bit that sassy little cousin. So Queenie is, I believe, about 4 or 5 years older than her. So she's still like old enough to where she's like, nah, this makes no sense. But still young enough to where she can relate to her. And Queenie's little cousin is a gem. She actually has some friends who've been dealing with mental health issues. So when Queenie starts dealing with her anxiety, she knows how to kind of help calm her down. And she was really, really useful in kind of navigating and ushering in a safer space for Queenie. My takeaways from the book: take good care of yourself. I feel like Queenie didn't take enough time for herself like she should have. She spent way too much time worrying about other people. It's actually really challenging to put on lip liner while you're talking. 2 seconds. And this is actually really light. Light and useless. I have a very baby liner. There we go. I'm gonna stop playing around with it. I know it's not working. Go back to the place that beat me. So my takeaways from the book are, Queenie was a dope character, but she stressed me out a lot, and I'm happy that she got the help she really needed. I remember thinking to myself halfway through the book, like, I want her to get therapy, and I'm happy that towards the end of the book she did, because she needed it. Someone dropped the ball on her self-esteem, and it made her make all these crazy life decisions that she should have been making. Yeah, the book said Bridget Jones' Diary. For me, it was just like mental health awareness. Reach out to your friends who are dealing with breakups. Maybe they're not okay. She really just wasn't okay. And a lot of what she was dealing with was her trying to heal. And I can relate to that as someone who heals in a very similar manner, but that was not, she was just making crazy, oh my God, just crazy decisions. Anyway, I did love the book. If you do not have your copy of Queenie, definitely get you a copy of Queenie. Read it. Candice Carty-Williams. I did try to see if she wrote any other books I would have known. She did a lot of short stories. She's won a lot of awards. She's actually a year older than me, so I need to get on the ball with writing because I'm holding her book, talking about her book. Mine's still saved on my computer. So Queenie, don't forget to get your copy. It was a great read. Black authors definitely support more Black authors. Our stories matter just as much as anyone else's. And this is my look. This is my finished look. It's very, what did I say it was at the beginning? Melanin Sunburst Goddess. What do you think? Let me know. Leave a comment below and let me know whether I did a good job or not. With this particular look or any other looks. The full review for Queenie is up on the blog, as is In Real Life. The In Real Life article is all about anxiety and depression and mental health in the Black community, and how Black women as a whole are frequently told we should suck it up because we're strong Black women. It is okay not to be okay. This was not a PSA for anxiety or mental health. That is what I got from this book. It was just like, you know what? She was crying for help and not enough people heard her. If you are feeling stressed out, if you need to talk to somebody, definitely seek help. Don't be afraid to say that I'm not strong enough. It's okay. All right, guys, I will see you next week or next month. Whenever I'm done reading the next book, I'll see you the next video. How about that? I will see you next video where we will be talking about whatever book I just finished reading and a new look for you. It's your internet bestie, Noelle Blue, and I will see you next time. Bye!